Div headquarters was about 4 mile out of town, and it was built in a big escarpment, and the Italians had built like holes right into the escarpment, and Div moved into there. They didn't live in town, and we used to live out on the ground outside. Well, we went out in the flat and we dug a hole that fitted like the three of us sort of thing. We dug the hole so as we could stand up in it, but with the beds on the side, so that if we got blown in, we wouldn't get covered in the cupboards, you know. And it was just dust. Just covered it over. We pinched stuff and covered it over and put rugs and that over the top, and just bare dust. Used to worry about tanks and that going across in case they took the wrong road at times, you know. If you could hear aircraft, you just diced your bike and look for a place to hide at the moment. Yeah. I remember Emo, the sergeant, he got caught one day on the flat, and the Italians built stone dikes. I don't know what they were for, but he was near one of them, and he just stepped off his bike and ran to this thing, and he hid behind it, and the German went past, had a shot at him, you know, and went up and did a big turn, come back, and Emo was standing behind the thing, and he just gave him a wave and it kept on going. It was cold at night time. Yeah, hot in the daytime, cold at night time. That's right. Very seldom rain. Mostly dust storms. Used to see them building up and coming through. Where we were camped only about 100 yards from where Div headquarters were, and when it came through, you couldn't even see the hill where the motors, you know, where the mountain was, sort of thing. Yeah. The brigades would be within rifle shot of the German guns, and we would travel to each one of those and deliver our messages to brigades, and then brigade would take it over and look after it from there on. Well, when you finished your run, you went and had a rest and so forth. If anything happened, they would send you out again with different runs. We had runs each day, and then we had other runs that we used to take messages out. If anything cropped up, they had to send things out. Yeah. You're talking about the first day we were bombed. We went back and we settled into Brook. This is before anybody had arrived, and our blokes were all lined up with their cars and all lined up instead of dug in and all the rest of it. And we had a tent set up, and we were getting messages on this phone. Anyhow, we were sitting there, and these 5 Stukas came over, and the first thing we knew, they were coming screaming down at this tent that we were sitting in. And outside we had holes dug, and that's right, up in the hill area there. It was that hard that if you had a shovel, it was all right, but if you didn't, you couldn't dig because it was too hard. And they dug little slit trenches about this deep, you know, thinking, oh, that's all right. So we built it along like that, and then across like this. See, one could lie there and one could lie across here, sort of thing. You know, when I ran outside, there was blokes beat me out, and there was blokes filled up the trenches all round. So I dived in on top of one of the other blokes, and I was still a bit above the floor. And as these bombs were coming down, you could hear this. They had the sirens on them, you know. They used to put the sirens on them, and when they let the bomb go, they just 5 seconds, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, bang, you got it, you know. And after it was all over, while it was on, the blokes underneath me, I reckon every time that the bomb hit that I was below the ground, these blokes were going down into the hole. Anyway, when we got up, we had a fellow from Wollumna down near Bega. And when we got up, he just lay down in the tent where he was. Big, tall fella. When we got up, he just come wandering out of the tent. He didn't bother to run, he stayed where he was. Germans had an idea. They used to, when they were firing, they would fire 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if they found anything, that was looking for something. And then if they found it, they would fire 4 in a pattern. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1 in the middle. So if you were quick enough to see where the Germans were, you knew where they were aiming, sort of. Yeah. Used to fire, well, particularly in Tobruk, they used to fire into the same areas nearly all the time. In Tobruk, just as you go around Tobruk, going west, there was a nice beach and a nice wadi that ran down to it. We used to use it for going down there to have a swim, clean up and all the rest of it. We used to go down there often. And it just, the actual bank would be about as high as that, you know, where the wave used to come in. And I remember being there and they come down, bombed through this harbour the day we were there swimming. We were in swimming and we lay there and lay against the side, you know, as they were going out. And I remember the Stukas going out over past us, and they never looked back, you know, they just looked at what they were looking at as they were coming down. But all us fellas were all lying against them in our nutties. The English ships were from the Indian squadron. They used to come up and they used to come in and they would park. There'd be 2 or 3 and they'd come in and they'd park out in the stream. And in Tobruk itself, they had a Scotch unit there with, what would you call them? Things that went out to pick stuff up when they brought stuff up. Like a little boat sort of thing. We went down there one day because we knew they went out there, and we went down there and dispatch riders would ask them if we could go out with them. So, anyway, when we went out there, they had one boat with people with wounded fellas in it, which went round one side, and the other one we went into to the left-hand side, and they had all the stuff that they were handing out for Tobruk, like carrying stuff to hand out. And I can remember this particular time we went out and they had boxes of oranges, which we'd never seen, you know. And anyway, when we were coming up, Joe and I went up the front talking to the fellas running the show there, and Bob stopped at the back, and when they come near past, he dropped one of these oranges onto a part as we were coming past. And the funny part was we had the utility at the time, and we just been and got our utility and come back to the wharf there, and we just had it parked in the cover, just doing the taps up, and a couple of officers said, "Hello, what are you fellas doing here?" And as it happened, we had our white and blue scarves on. They said, "Oh, dispatch riders, okay, fellas, keep going." But we had this box of oranges in the car, pinching stuff. But when we got back to the camp, we had this box of oranges. When we lifted it in the camp, you could smell them for miles. They lasted about 2 ups. You know, you couldn't keep them and hide them. Everybody smelled them. Bully beef and biscuits. Yeah, yeah. That was the main meal. Yeah. What they used to have a copper, a big copper, you know, and they used to mix the bully beef and different stuff that they have. If they had anything to spare, they put in there and mix it all up. The cooks would do that up like that. Yeah, it was good. Yeah. Alamein was a different kettle of fish, of course, but it was only short, like it was only a short distance, Alamein, like between the river and the sea, and we were all stuck near the sea, the 9 Dev. That was the main drive, of course, and we had a lot of blokes killed at Alamein that we didn't have killed in Tobruk too as well. The British warships, they were those Viking class, the one they knew once, and when they went into action, along the side they had like built with a rope right through the top. But when they went in action, they used to let them down. But then when they had troops on, they brought them up, and about half or about 7 or 8 of our blokes were sick, and they were over leaning on this rope, and the rope broke and they went into the water.
Oh, yeah.
And as it happened, they stopped, because the British normally don't stop because of the submarines and so forth. But they stopped to pick these blokes up. We lost a couple of blokes there. That was coming back to Egypt sort of thing. See, when I went away, I had Mary, and we didn't get married. We got engaged, because I reckon if I went away and anything happened, it was too bad. See, anyhow, when we come home, I thought this is no good. So the first leave, we got married before I went to Queensland. Not till late in the war, in the first part, but after you've been there a few years, you get to the stage where it doesn't worry you, because you reckon if you're going to get hit, you're going to get hit. Sort of thing. But in the first place, yes, you used to be worried about it and looking for a place to hide, and that went right on through there, through Alamein, you know, and
Yeah.
until we got to New Guinea. See? And that's when I got hit, and that was the reason I got hit. Well, when we come back, we were sent to New Guinea for the attack on Lae, and we were the only people that did a seaborne landing. We landed, like, had the ships to land on the beach and all the rest of it. And after we landed, we were carrying all the stuff going. We were about, must have been 8 or 10 kilometres from Lae when we landed. And we were carrying all the stuff going to Lae. And then when we got up near Lae, by this time I was sergeant in the dispatch riders, and Lae, you couldn't use the bikes or anything like that. It was just a matter of if they wanted to send anything out, they had to send the bloke out walking, you know. And at this stage, they sent me up with about 9 or 10 fellas to help the fellas up that the attack on Lae. And when I got up there, they were sheltered with the Japs had a 4-barrel pom-pom, and we had a boomerang that was going over across the top of the trees at different lights, you know. And when he'd go over, he'd give the gunners the fire, and they would fire, and he would tell them where it's landing as he was going past. And when they weren't shooting at the aircraft, they'd be landed on the bank where we were, and it used to cover an area about from here to the window. You know, the 4 barrels used to land in a heap, and they were all those .5 bombers, you know. And how stupid we were. And the captain said to me, "We've lost touch with the 20th Brigade. Take some hemp and see if you can get in touch with them and get us in touch." See. So I had Keith with me, and we took this bag and we put the bag through it, and I was walking in the front and he was at the back, and the lake there was about 5 different lakes. The big lake was over right near Lay, and then the others were about up to your knee, like running through. And we started off, we walked out, you know, and we walked into the first lake. There was nobody about. And when it happened, there was a burst. This burst landed about 50 yards up the river. And we didn't take any notice, see? And then another burst landed 50 yards down the river. And then we woke up, the Japs must have had someone sitting out the front, had it all measured up right to the centimetre. And I said to Keith, "Oh, one in the middle that landed right on top of us." And but anyone with, like, the time I'd been in the army and all the rest of it, never thought about marching into the river to taking the stuff over to the 20th Brigade. It was just waiting to get hit.